This is the Red Podcast.
It's Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for experts. I'm David Hooper, and on this episode, the subject, live events. So we're going to follow up to the previous episode where I talked to Terry Weaver about his event that he does every year called The Thing. Strangely enough, how is this for irony? You know, one of those industries that has been really hurt by COVID-19 and quarantine or coronavirus or whatever you want to call it, it's Airbnb. I saw a headline earlier today. This guy was talking about printing money. He was making so much money with Airbnb. Now he's broke. He wasn't making that much money, I guess, not enough to bank it away, but he's got all these properties that are sitting there empty. And there's a saying I heard, it said, live by leverage, die by leverage. However, just outside the Red Room, I'm recording in my home studio right now. I'm in a neighborhood that at one time was full of Airbnb, and there are a ton of kind of frat guy, maybe bachelor party kind of guys hanging out, day drinking, having a good time, and annoying the bejesus out of everybody else in the neighborhood. So at least one Airbnb is back. Will your event be back? I don't know. Let's talk about that. There's some things that I say on here, and I think I've said that before, sometimes maybe even 100 times before, but I also have to keep saying them as long as they're the things that set up the stories that I have to tell. So I'm going to do that right now. As you may know, if you've listened, I spent a lot of time in the music industry. And over the years, I probably produced 1,500 live events, mostly music acts, but sometimes spoken word stuff. I did a few poetry slams for a project I was working on, some seminars, boot camps, meetups, comedy shows. I've done a lot of stuff. And I'm very relieved not to be in the live event business right now. Aside from a monthly meetup that I organized with a group called Nashville Podcasters, I've really got nothing on the calendar. And because that's just a meetup, it's a free event for podcasters in Nashville. Whoever wants to come, we have people from all over. It's not a big deal for it to be put on hold. What would be a big deal is a high ticket event with a lot of money on the line, a high volume event with a lot of people coming. When I was doing my big music conference in Nashville, every year we'd have 2,000, 2,500 people come in. We would have 40,000 people at night. It was crazy. Unless you've been through it, I don't know that you could even imagine the level of stress. Having 2,500 people at a venue, I mean, everything, every little detail from the check-in to security. Being a music event, we had issues sometimes. A band thought it would be interesting one time to, they took the fire extinguishers and made interesting use of them. Let's just say that. It was pretty bad. The hotel was pissed. Anyway, a lot of pressure, a lot of people around, a lot of people are counting on you to have a great time. Everybody's time for them individually is important to them. So there's a lot that can go wrong. The other thing that I'm glad that I don't have right now is a business where I have a high percentage of my money coming in via public speaking. I was talking to a well-known speaker a couple of weeks ago. 70% of his money went away overnight. And he's one of the lucky ones because he's got several New York Times best-selling books. He's got consulting. This is a guy who's really smart. I remember having a conversation with him actually a couple of years ago about this because I think he was planning for this or he knew that it could happen. He was doing some stuff, consulting membership type stuff. And it was pretty cheap. It was, $500 or $1,000. This guy, when he walks on stage, he's making $15,000. He goes in, does 45 minutes, out of there. That's it, keynoter. But he's doing these little gigs. I call them little. I mean, $500, $1,000. It adds up. And I was like, what are you doing, man? And he said, I see so many guys that are on the road all the time, and they make good money. And yeah, you can sock some of it away. But if you're not on the road, then what do? They get stuck on the road. They've got to go on the road to continue to make a living. And because he's not one of those guys, he's okay. Still, though, it's hard to compete with $15,000 a pop. That's a lot of consulting. That's a lot of membership sites to sell. And instantly, when this thing hit, you're talking 6 figures of business that went away. And not only the 6 figures that he got paid for just by going on stage, I'm talking about future consulting he would have had, the book sales he would have had, the membership site payments he would have had. It's a hard situation to be in. If that's where you are right now, where you are relying on live events for the majority of your income, in a couple of episodes, I'm going to talk more about options for repurposing your business. If you haven't subscribed to Red Podcast, here's how to do that. Go to Big Podcast, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. You'll see it there, Red Podcast. You'll know it because it's red. There are 3 buttons, one for Android, one for iPhone, one with an RSS feed. Pick the one that works for you. And in a couple of episodes, I will talk more about repurposing what you have done so that it will work now in a situation where we cannot get together in person and live events aren't happening. But for now, on this episode, let's talk about options on what to do if you have a live event coming up, either as a performer, and by that I mean a speaker, a musician, a comic, or as the promoter. First, let's start with the promoter options. Here's my rule. Put people first. I was talking a minute ago about 2,500 people coming in. You want to think about their experience. You want to think, are they checking in easily? Are they having a good time? Are they safe? And safety is the issue now. Not just people taking fire extinguishers and running around acting like idiots, but we're talking about COVID-19, catching something that could kill them, could stroke them out. That's a real issue right now. Insane Clown Posse. You know Insane Clown Posse? It's a music act. Kind of crazy. I got stories about Insane Clown Posse that I can't talk about here. Insane Clown Posse, for a time, was not very responsible. If they wanted to stay in the city and party, cancel everything out, they would do it. We don't feel like getting on the bus and going to the next city. They just keep partying. That was their tour. But 25 years later, they are still around. They have a legion of fans. They've been more or less pretty good to their fans, and they do a big festival every year. It's called Gathering of the Juggalos. They canceled it for this year. Here's the statement. They said, the bottom line is that we refuse to risk even one Juggalo life by hosting the gathering during these troubling times. They referenced their album, Fearless Fred Fury, and advised fans to heed the words of Fred Fury and Flip the Rat. Be safe, watch your step, and take it easy. You can't replace what you mean to our team. If you're a promoter, you've got to think about that. It would be very easy for you to go ahead and have your event and force things. Will people show up? I don't know. Maybe they would. Let's say that they do. But let's say that they get sick. And let's say you get a reputation for not caring about the speakers, the people who are attending. Well, then you're done. Listen to Insane Clown Posse. That's great advice. Put people first. Part of that is keeping communication open. I've seen a few events scheduled for the next few months, and they seem to be waiting till the last minute to make a decision on whether to cancel. And I get that. But it also makes it difficult for people to make plans. If you've got an event over the next few months, you better be checking in with your people weekly, letting them know what is happening. Yep, we're still doing it. If you got any questions, come to us. If you want to work something else out because you don't feel comfortable coming to this event, come to us. Let us know. Part of why promoters aren't canceling is money. They've already spent the money that they brought in via ticket sales and sponsors, and canceling might mean that they have to give refunds. That's how it works. Live by leverage, die by leverage. That's the business. But that's the problem. And here's why they're not canceling. They are so leveraged that canceling these events may mean that they are not only done for this year, but they are done forever. Here's what I think is going to end up happening. I think that we're going to have a lot of promoters. They're going to try to reschedule and possibly do virtual only events in a way to get out of refunding tickets and sponsorship money. Will that work? I don't know. I doubt it. A virtual event is completely different. A rescheduled event is completely different. Imagine all those people. Let's say you got this 2,500 people. Are they all going to be able to make the new event date? Probably not. But I do think this. I think both sponsors and ticket holders, I think they're understanding. I think they want to work with promoters, and I think they get what promoters are going through. Live events, though, again, not the same as virtual ones. Imagine the trade show floor at a live event. There's hundreds, possibly thousands of people walking through. Even if you're not a sponsor, even if you're just an attendee, that's where a lot of the action happens, a lot of the connections that you make. What is that like at a virtual event? It's like going to web pages, click on a booth, read it. You're not going to really connect with somebody, maybe via video chat or text chat, but that's exhausting. Can't get in and interrupt conversations and meet people and be introduced to other people. It's a completely different thing. So understand that if you've got an event coming up, yeah, it's a tough time. People do want to work with you, but don't piss on somebody's leg and call it rain. Hey, we're doing a virtual event. It's going to be just as good as a live event. Nope, it is not. As far as handling refunds and rescheduling, I don't have an answer for that other than what I said earlier. Put people first. What would I do in a situation like this? You never really know unless you're in it. I think no matter what you do, some people are going to be upset, but I also know there's a lot of empathy right now for people in this business, but that may be a diminishing window. You need to act right now. If you're going to cancel something, change something around, work with people while they are being empathetic with you and be understanding. We're all scared, man. Money's drying up for a lot of people. So you may find your attendees are a little bit more forceful when it comes to wanting refunds. Work with them. 50% off, 25% off, work with them. Do what you can. I think you've got that empathy. I think they're going to work with you, but don't be a jerk about it. You don't want to die on this hill. This year's event may be shot. Next year's event, you can come back stronger. People will be even more excited next year because we've spent this year in quarantine. You can take the gamble. Live events are already a gamble. So I think as live event promoters, sometimes we like that. We like the highs and the lows. But again, live by leverage, die by leverage. You can ride that thing out. That's going to depend on your risk tolerance. Side note, right now is a great time to get in the live event business as far as booking space. Hotels would love to hear from you right now. They're willing to work deals they would not have done just a month ago. Because of that, that may change the economics on your event. You may not need as many sponsors. You may not need the high ticket prices. And even with those lower income numbers from those things, you may find you make more money in the end because your hotel, your catering, some of these other deals you're making, you don't have to expend so much. Let's talk about performer options. If you are a speaker or an entertainer, somebody who's doing a performance at one of these events that has been changed, it's going to be canceled. Here's number one, work with promoters. These guys have taken big risks, and even in good times to put on events, it is difficult. Right now, it is worse than ever. As a performer, you need places to perform. The same thing applies to you that applies to them. Do not think short term. Don't try to collect on money now just because you signed a contract, you made a deal. That went out the window when quarantine came in, as far as I'm concerned. It may be better to try to work something out for future performances, and it probably will be better if you want to have a career after this year. You're going to need these performers, the guys that are the risk takers, the guys that are going to exist next year, because a lot of them are not going to exist. So work with the guys that you can. Be good to the people that are going to be around next year. If you're good to them now, they will remember you next year because a lot of people are not being good to them. And one option that you have, realizing that virtual isn't the same as doing something live, what we just talked about, it is to provide virtual content for promoters to help them keep ticket holders happy. As I mentioned, right now, we've got a lot of empathy all around sponsors, ticket holders, performers. Work with people. There are a lot of people that would love to hear from you, have that content delivered virtually. If that's an option for you, put that on the table. Second thing, beyond working with promoters, work on your own business. Think about that speaker that I mentioned earlier in this episode. It is not good to rely too heavily on other people to provide you with income, with sales, with leads. That means if your business exists because of promoters that fill a room and allow you to walk on that stage and talk for 45 minutes, then walk off it, that is a huge risk. So now is a great time for you to work on your mailing list, expand how you deliver your message directly, and generally get better as far as the content that you do deliver and the way you deliver it. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be back in a couple of episodes to talk more about this reinvention, working around these issues that we're all facing now to make sure that you do not miss it. Bigpodcast.com, BIG podcast.com/subscribe. Hit the iPhone button, hit the Android button, hit the RSS button. However you listen to your podcast, I've got a button for you. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Until then, put people first, including promoters, including sponsors. We are all in this together, and we are going to come out of this. Those with whom you work will remember you for it. I know it's scary. Don't think short term. Let's look at next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. We're going to get out of this. We got to get through this year first, though. So work with people, help them out. They're going to help you out. Not only right now, they're going to help you out in the future, too. And we're going to all be better prepared because of this time. While you're over at bigpodcast.com, look around there. I can help you get your message out via a podcast. So go to bigpodcast.com. Thank you for listening to this podcast, Red, the marketing podcast for experts. And I will see you on the next episode. If you're in that situation, if you're in that situation where you're relying on, if you're in that situation like those speakers who, if you're in that situation, my voice is still messed up. If you're in that situation, oh gosh. It's like the worst word to say.